The Supermarine Spitfire begins not as a machine of war, but as a dream, sketched on drafting paper. A sleek, improbable answer to a question the world hadn't yet asked. Its elliptical wings, tapered like a seabird's, carry the DNA of racing planes and the desperation of an island nation bracing for storm clouds. Designed by R.J. Mitchell, a man racing against time and tuberculosis, the Spitfire was born from a simple, brutal truth. Britain needed a fighter that could outrun, outclimb, and outfight anything the skies had ever seen. What emerged was not just a plane, but a symbol, a marriage of elegance and ferocity that would define an era. At its heart lay the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, a 27-liter V12 masterpiece that howled like a banshee when pushed to its limits. With each iteration, its horsepower grew, from 1,000 in 1936 to over 2,000 by war's end, transforming the Spitfire from a nimble interceptor to a predator capable of chasing V-1 rockets at 400 mph. But raw power meant nothing without control. Mitchell's genius was in the wings, a thin elliptical design that sliced through the air with minimal drag, granting the Spitfire a lethal agility. Pilots swore it could turn on a coin, its responsiveness so intuitive it felt like an extension of their nerves. Yet early models had a flaw. Their narrow undercarriage, prone to ground loops and shattered propellers, a baptism of fire for rookie pilots. The Spitfire's true test came in 1940 when the skies over southern England became a charnel house. The Battle of Britain wasn't fought with armies, but with contrails and cannon fire. Outnumbered, often out-experienced, RAF pilots hurled their Spitfires and Hurricanes at waves of German bombers. The Spitfire's role was clear: hunt the escorts. Me-109s, faster in a dive, met their match in the Spitfire's tighter turn radius. Pilots danced in vertical climbs, engines screaming, cannons spitting 20mm shells that could shred a bomber's wing in seconds. But this wasn't chivalry, it was arithmetic. The Spitfire's 8 Browning machine guns, later replaced by Hispano cannons, fired 1,200 rounds a minute. Survival hinged on conserving ammunition, on waiting until the enemy filled your windscreen, close enough to see their goggles. Yet for all its lethal grace, the Spitfire was a fragile beast. Its liquid-cooled engine bled coolant if a single bullet pierced the radiator, forcing pilots to nurse their machines home or bail out over the channel. Cockpits, unpressurized and open to the cold, iced at altitude, while G-forces drained the blood from pilots' eyes during tight turns. But these men, some barely out of school, learned to read their planes like living things. They felt the shudder of a stalled wing, the rumble of a Merlin pushed too hard, the faint ping of bullet strikes on the fuselage. To fly a Spitfire was to balance on a knife's edge between mastery and catastrophe. As the war ground on, the Spitfire evolved. The Mach IX, armed with a 4-bladed propeller and clipped wings, dueled Focke-Wulfs at 30,000 feet. Photo reconnaissance variants, stripped of guns and painted baby blue, slipped silently over Berlin, cameras snapping images that shaped D-Day. Some Spitfires even carried bombs, a role their designers never imagined. A thoroughbred, forced to plow fields. By 1945, over 20,000 had been built, each one slightly different, tweaked and tuned like a bespoke suit. But the cost was written in names. 40% of Spitfire pilots died before their 22nd birthday. When peace came, the Spitfire didn't fade into museums. It flew on in the hands of post-war air forces, chasing rebels in Malaya, training pilots in Syria, even dogfighting Israeli Messerschmitts. A bitter irony. Today, the growl of a Merlin still haunts air shows, polished wings glinting in the sun. But to reduce the Spitfire to nostalgia is to miss its deeper truth. It was a machine born of necessity, refined by desperation, and perfected by the young men who trusted it with their lives. Its curves held the calculus of survival: a few millimeters of aluminum skin, a fuel tank lined with rubber to seal bullet holes, a cockpit designed for a pilot's average height of 5'6". The Spitfire's legacy isn't just in the battles it won, but in the myth it became. A plane that outlived its own war, it remains a paradox, a weapon of destruction that inspired hope, a killing machine that somehow embodied the stubborn, fragile beauty of defiance. To hear its engine now is to hear an echo of a world on the edge, when the future hung on the turn of a wing, and courage was measured in split seconds and gallons of high-octane fuel. The Spitfire wasn't invincible, but for a fleeting moment, it made the impossible seem within reach.